We're almost there, guys. We are almost through the final god-awful international break of this year. And we won't have another until March 2025. Thank the Lord. So today we're going to finish the week off as we've done in previous international breaks. I've gave you my updated final Championship League table prediction 1 to 24s. We've asked AI what it thinks the league table will look like, and today we're going to finish off by asking the bookies. So on either side of the screen, probably this side, we've got a league table which we're going to fill with each team and their odds of basically winning the championship title, and we're going to rank them from the biggest outsiders to the team who are odds on favourites. I'm going to be making a few comparisons to the pre-season odds, which of course have changed dramatically. Now the gap from top to bottom is absolutely huge and is nowhere near as tight as what it was pre-season, understandably, and there's a lot of teams who have dropped massively and have become major outsiders compared to where they were at the start of the season, and others whose odds have shortened massively. So, starting with the team rank outsiders on their own out back, it is QPR. Understandably, they are the biggest outsiders in 24th at 7,500 to 1. No surprise there, rooted to the bottom of the championship, 5 points from safety. There's no surprise at all that QPR are the biggest outsiders. It's quite a surprise to see that they're actually the lone outsiders. There is no one else with odds as far out as Queen's Park Rangers. Interestingly, they were 15th in pre-season. Obviously, we're not going to compare the odds because they've widened so much. Comparing the numbers is pointless, but comparing their position within the league table, they were 15th in pre-season with the odds. Now they're bottom of the league. Then we have three teams who are all joint on 5,000 to 1, and there's not too much of a surprise with these three either. We've got Pompey, Oxford and Plymouth. There's no surprise, these three are all massive outsiders given the fact that Pompey are in the relegation zone, have looked pretty poor all season. Oxford, though, they're obviously going to be huge outsiders, but to see them sort of in the bottom three, I think it's a little bit harsh given the fact that they've sort of mirrored Derby's start to the season. Derby, they're shorter than what Oxford are still huge outsiders, which I think is a little bit of a shame given how respectively they've started the season, and they're obviously alongside Plymouth, who have done okay, but I still fancy to really struggle. And there's not much change here. Plymouth were the biggest outsiders alongside Oxford at the start of the season. It's Pompey whose odds have dropped massively. Pompey were actually 13th in the league at the start of the season, so they weren't well fancied, but they were right in the middle, potentially. Maybe some thought they could have, a dark horse push for the playoffs. Unfortunately, that's not came to be, and these three are down at 5,000 to 1. Then we've got two teams who are at 2,000 to 1, and they sit 19th and 20th. We've got Preston and Hull City. Now, Preston haven't been fancied at all. Pre-season, they were 21st, just outside of the bottom three. In fact, they would join with Cardiff, who were in the bottom three at the time. So Preston haven't been fancied at all, and not much has changed there, which doesn't surprise me really. I think a lot of people were thinking the bookies were being quite harsh, and a lot of people's pre-season predictions on Preston, having them that low, were harsh, but it's proven to be pretty darn accurate given their current league position, and Hull are not fancied at all. Hull were 12th in pre-season, so like Pompey, they were middle of the road and were probably a bit of an unknown quantity given all the change and all the transition happening with Hull, new manager, overhaul of players, etc. But this shows that the bookies do not fancy Hull City, and their start to the season has certainly caused them to go cold, basically, and they're now massively sceptical over Hull City's chances, and that is probably not helped by the uncertainty around the manager currently, who might be teetering on the brink of the sack if the next couple of results go his way. So no real change on Preston, although Hull, well, the faith in them has dropped off massively. In 18th, sat alone at 1,000 to 1, we've got Cardiff City, who weren't fancied at the start of the season. They were in the bottom three, as I said, just above Oxford and Plymouth, who were the biggest outsiders. Cardiff were second biggest outsiders at the start of the season. They've improved slightly, obviously in terms of the order relative to other teams. They've increased slightly, but are still right down there, which again, there's no real surprise by. They had a bright start under Omar Rizza, which might have shortened their odds a little bit, but I still think there's quite a bit of scepticism around Cardiff. The unknown around who their new manager will be, if it's going to be Omar Rizza, if it's not. If it's not, who's it going to be? That could go one way, it could go the other. Still, a lot of uncertainty around Cardiff, which I think is why people aren't quite confident enough to put any money on them at this point in the season. Also standing out on their own in 17th, we've got Derby County, who are 750 to 1. Now, Derby were relatively well fancied if you compare them to other newly promoted sides. In fact, they were joint with the same odds as Sunderland and Hull at the start of pre-season, which just goes to show how well they were fancied, or how well not fancied Sunderland were at the time. Crazy to think the odds on them both were exactly the same with Derby and Sunderland. But yeah, Derby have dropped slightly in the league table. They were 10th respective in the pre-season odds, which is absolutely bonkers, and naturally that's dropped off. So I don't quite know where the pre-season optimism with the bookies came when it comes to Derby County, but they've still done incredibly well along with Oxford so far this season. And that's what I meant earlier. Oxford are still massively outsiders, and obviously neither of them are going to go on and win the title, but you'd think Oxford had earned the right to be at the same sort of odds as Derby County at this moment in time, but they're not. Derby is significantly shorter and sit alone in 17th. In 16th and 15th respectively, we've got one team who hasn't moved all that much, one who's dropped like a stone, because in 16th we've got Luton Town, and in 15th, Stoke City, both at 500 to 1. Now, Stoke, exactly where you'd expect them to be in the league table, in the odds order. 15th, that's Stoke, that's where they live. As for Luton though, massive drop-off. Luton were third favourites in pre-season, behind only Leeds and Burnley. Now they've dropped massively behind an absolute ton of teams, and that just shows how far off Luton have gone. 500 to 1 outsiders now, and even when we compare them to other teams like Coventry, who've started really slowly, Coventry are quite well fancied in terms of comparing them to Luton at this point. So this just goes to show how much the confidence in Luton has completely deteriorated since the start of the season, which you can't be surprised by. And again, the unknown around whether Rob Edwards will stay, whether he'll go, and what will happen after that won't help people's confidence in Luton either. So Stoke, I can completely understand why they are where they are. Luton, though, that's damning on their start to the season. In 14th, sat alone on 400 to 1, it's Swansea City. Now, there's not much surprise there either. They're exactly where I'd sort of predict them to be in the overall order. They have improved, though, in terms of their pre-season odds. They were just above the bottom three and 20th in pre-season, so they've had a significant leap forward into mid-table, but there's not much else to say around Swansea. I've mentioned how many times this year how I see them as a very mid-table, mediocre team, and the odds reflect that. Above them, in 13th, standing alone at 350 to 1, is Sheffield Wednesday. They've gone up a little bit compared to pre-season, to which they were 16th. I'm actually surprised to see Sheffield Wednesday have shorter odds than Swansea. In fact, probably even shorter odds than Stoke as well. That's even a bit of a surprise. I find Stoke and Swansea to be two sides who are looking a little bit more solid and consistent than Sheffield Wednesday, albeit not by much. I'm not going to get too carried away, but I would say Sheffield Wednesday just behind them both in the order. So to see them with shorter odds than the two teams below them is a little bit of a shock, but I'm not surprised to see Sheffield Wednesday sat smack bang in the Championship, because that's where their form would have them. In 12th, at 250 to 1, and I am surprised to see this team below, well, definitely the two teams who are above them currently. It's Norwich City, 12th, 250 to 1, and their odds have dropped off massively as well. Norwich was 6th in pre-season. Now they've dropped down to 12th, and I don't know if there's a bit of panic around Norwich at the minute. I know they've just come off the back of or they are going through a bit of a sticky run, but they're a very solid home team, and I think if they can get their best players firing and maybe share the goals around and not rely on Sargent and Sainz as much as they maybe have been, I still think Norwich are more than playoff contenders. So I'm a bit surprised to see them drop as far as 12th. Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias with recent results. I don't quite know, but still fancy Norwich a little bit higher than that, and I think 12th is maybe a tad harsh. Above them, in 11th, 200 to 1, is Coventry. Still quite well fancied, I would say. They were 8th in pre-season, so Coventry weren't actually massively fancied in terms of a playoff team in pre-season, which I was a little bit surprised by, but they've not dropped that much. They're down in 11th. You'd think of how far Luton have dropped from 3rd down to bloody 16th. Coventry have only dropped a few places. So, again, this could be more trust and faith in their squad. But like a lot of teams I've mentioned already, a huge degree of uncertainty. I'd be interested to see where these odds go depending on who their new manager is, who looks like it's going to be Frank Lampard, who I'm not convinced by at all. So if anything, with him coming in, I'd probably drop their odds further. But a little bit surprised to see Coventry up in around 11th. But would I be surprised to see them get back up there this season? Not really. We've got two teams at 150 to 1 in 9th and 10th. No surprise with both of these. Bristol City in 9th, Blackburn in 10th. And these are the teams I was surprised are above Norwich. I'm surprised Coventry and Blackburn especially are above Norwich. Bristol City, not so much. I mean, I've said in all my prediction videos, the AI had Bristol City 10th. I had Bristol City 10th. The bookies have them joint 9th and 10th. That's Bristol City's position right there. But they have got better odds than pre-season. Bristol City were down in 19th in pre-season, so a big boost in confidence with them. And I'm not surprised. They've had a very solid start under Liam Manning, not losing many games. And you could say the same for Blackburn Rovers as well. They were 18th pre-season. They've gone up 2/10, so both teams have pretty much moved up 8 or 9 positions. So that's perfectly realistic for me. They're two sides that I think will flirt with the playoffs, but might not have the squad depth and consistency to quite make a full-on fist of it. So 9th and 10th makes perfect sense. In 8th at 100 to 1, we've got Watford. Now, that's fair. That's exactly where I've had them in my updated predictions as well. The reason for that is because they're extremely inconsistent. And as I've said, it all depends on where they go. They could go off in two separate paths, Watford. They can either improve their away form, maintain their home form, they're a playoff team. However, if their away form stays as it is, which isn't great, and their home form naturally drops off, they'll drop off away from the top 6. So 8th is a sensible prediction for Watford, but pre-season, they had them in 9th. They were 9th in the order with the bookies, so they were kind of well-fancied pre-season, and maybe more well-fancied than a lot of people gave the bookies credit for. And it's kind of proven to be true because they went from 9th to 8th. They're in and around the same position as they were before, which, yeah, is fair enough given Watford's good start. In 7th, just outside the playoffs at 80 to 1, is Millwall. Now, this is massively, of course, credited to their very, very strong start to the season. They were 17th in pre-season with the bookies, so a fantastic rise for Millwall, and no less than what they deserve, if I'm honest, and I had them in 7th in my own predicted league table as well. So, yeah, this is exactly where I think they'll be. Unlike Watford and Bristol City, they're a little bit more consistent. They're very solid defensively. They might succumb to their squad depth and quality compared to the top 6, but Millwall's underlying numbers props them up quite nicely, and that's why I think they deserve to be where they are, and they might well stay there between now and the end of the season. So Millwall 7th isn't as outlandish as it may seem, and given the fact they've risen 10 places since pre-season, is just fantastic credit to how good they've been so far. And on to the top 6. Now, again, like my updated league table prediction, like the AI, the top 6 is exactly the same. It's been the same with me, the same with the AI. I think it's been the same with a lot of YouTubers. I think a lot of people are quite confident in the top 6 being the top 6, and the only difference is the order of it, which I find really, really interesting. But what order do the bookies think the top 6 is going to be in? Well, in 6th at 25 to 1, and this is quite a big jump compared to where we just were with Millwall, so the top 6 again is significantly shorter than the rest of the league, is West Brom. Yeah, West Brom are in 6th, and they've not been well fancied from the start. They were 7th in pre-season. They've crawled into the playoffs here, and I sort of get it. I mean, I'd massively back West Brom because they've got Carlos Corberán, and I back them to be defensively solid, which massively benefits any team going for promotion. But I guess recent results, lots of draws, not scoring many goals, has caused them to go a little bit cold on West Brom. That I understand massively as well. But undoubtedly they should be a playoff team, albeit the bookies have them down in 6th. In 5th, another significant jump you could say at 14 to 1, we've got Burnley, who have dropped actually since pre-season. In pre-season, they were 2nd. They were automatic promotion contenders. They were in the top 2 with the bookies in pre-season. They have dropped down to 5th, and I understand why as well, because I'm not convinced by Burnley. I've said numerous times on the channel as to why I think, like West Brom, they're a very solid defensive outfit, but I don't think they create enough under Scott Parker. I feel like there is a ceiling, and Scott Parker's style of football, I think it can only go so far, and I still stand a little bit dumbfounded by how he's managed to get Bournemouth, Fulham promoted previously, albeit I think Fulham were via the playoffs, so maybe it was Bournemouth. So he might get Burnley up via the playoffs again. Maybe that's what he's just good at, getting to that stage of the season and getting a team through that playoff campaign. But Burnley should undoubtedly be in the playoffs, that's no question, but I'm not convinced that they're good enough going forward to challenge the top 2. So I definitely have them in the playoffs. The bookies feel like they're more confident of them being in the playoffs than the top 2 as well, and they've got them down in 5th. In 4th, at 10-1, it's the Boro, and to be fair, we've not changed at all given the start to the season. And to be fair, the odds obviously widen massively the further down the league table you go, because when you've got teams in the bottom half, the chances of them winning the title now compared to pre-season is massively widened, because of course the points have been accrued since then. With 15 games in, the gap has grown. Obviously, when you get to the top 6, the odds remain pretty much just as short as they were in pre-season. So for example, Burnley were 7-1 in pre-season, sat in 2nd. Now they're 14-1 in 5th, so their odds have essentially halved. Boro, though, are pretty much exactly where they were. We were 11-1 in pre-season, sat in 4th, and now we're 10-1. So slightly shorter, albeit we're not fancied any more or any less than where we were before. And I kind of get that. You know, Boro showing all the positive signs that if things click and if we find consistency, if we cut out errors defensively, we'll be in and around the top 2, no doubt. We create enough, we concede little enough. So I think all the data shows that Boro are a top 2 contender without doubt. But I understand the bookies' reservations just with Boro's stupid individual errors at times and how we are just professionals at throwing points away. So that's why I completely understand that they've not exactly lost confidence in Boro. They've not decided that we're not a playoff team whatsoever, but they've not gambled on us being in the top 2 either. They've kept us exactly where we are and where we were before, and that is completely understandable. In 3rd, rising massively from pre-season, and this is completely understandable, it is Sunderland, who are 15-2, and this is a huge improvement on where they were pre-season. To be fair, the bookies actually fancied Sunderland more than I think a lot of people did. I had them in the bottom half. A couple of people had them mid-table to bottom half. They were 11th in pre-season, or you could say joint 9th. So Sunderland weren't miles off the top 6 with the bookies in pre-season. But of course, given their strong start, they've leapt massively into the playoffs. And there's no surprise there. As I mentioned, I've got them in the top 6. The AI's got them in the top 6. A lot of YouTubers have predicted them to be in the top 6. But interestingly enough, they've not got them in the top 2, because the leap to the top 2 is quite significant as well. The top 2 just seem absolutely set for the bookies, for the AI, for me, for others. Everyone seems quite set on the top 2, and they do believe Sunderland will drop into the playoffs, and I believe that will be the case as well. But I think given the fact they're top of the league, so far they've been absolutely outstanding. They're still fancied to be top of the playoff bunch at least. So Sunderland sit rightfully in 3rd. And then we move into the top 2, who of course, as you've seen in all the predictions, are exactly the same. I can't have any complaints about these two. It's a case of which order they are in. Now, the AI had Leeds 2nd and Sheffield United 1st. I had in my personal prediction Sheffield United 2nd and Leeds 1st, and that is what the bookies have gone with as well, because in 2nd at 5-1, again, a big leap, a significant leap into the top 2, shortened odds are Sheffield United. Now, they've gotten a bit of a boost. They were fancied pre-season, to be fair with the bookies. They were 5th, so they were a solid playoff contender, but they weren't fancied to be top 2. However, now they massively are. They've gone from what was 12-1 in the summer to 5-1 now, and I have no surprises there as to why. Sheffield United have been an outstandingly solid, consistent, concrete outfit who, as I've said, I trust massively to be up there fighting with the top 2 and be in contention. I've been really complimentary of how they've started the season, how they've turned their recruitment round, and just how reliable they look in games with their game management, their clean sheets, their defence. So, yeah, I think Sheffield United, a bit like Leeds, haven't quite hit top gear yet, and when they do, I don't think there's much question that these will be the top two, or they should be the top two given their squads as well. So Sheffield United, like many predicted, in the top two. However, top of the league, no surprise. They were top of the league in pre-season with the bookies. They're top of the league for me. They're top of the league for many others. And they're actually odds on in terms of they're not 5-1, they're not 4-1, they're not 3-1, they're 4-5. You'd actually lose money if you betted on Leeds United. That's how confident the bookies are. At 4-5, they're top of the league. And I have no complaints either about this. I've said time and time again, they're the team I think are nowhere near top gear. They're second gear at best, and they're still within touching distance of the top two. And I've said Leeds were unlucky last season not to go up because they played at such an unbelievable standard. It's just a shame for them that 3 other teams in the league did as well. However, this year the Championship is nowhere near as strong as it was last season. And if Leeds play at the same level that they did last season, they'll go up top. No doubt about it. If they increase their level, they'll run away with it. And I still feel like they've got gears to go through. That's why I'm confident once this Leeds team gets going, they'll run rampant at the top of the league and go up top two undoubtedly. I believe it. The bookies believe it. Most YouTubers believe it too. Leeds United, top of the league. I'd put my money on them. So guys, there are the bookies' predicted league table, the odds on each team and where they are, and a little bit on how they've changed, how they've gotten shorter, gotten longer compared to pre-season. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on the bookies' odds, where your team is, your thoughts on where your team is, and if you'd make any different predictions to what the bookies have this season. And if you've enjoyed the video, as always, do hit a like on the video and subscribe for much more Championship content to come. We do, of course, predict most rounds of the Championship as well as review them too, so subscribe if that's something you'd be interested to check out. And as I've mentioned throughout the video, I have done my own updated league table prediction. That's on the channel for you to check out, as well as asking AI where it thinks each team will finish and why. So check that video out if you haven't already. But until next time, guys, do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.